20 to 30% amber. That single number has probably decided more harvest dates than anything else in growing. And here's the uncomfortable truth about it. It does not exist. I went looking for the study that established it, the trial, the data set, anything, and there is no study. Not one peer-reviewed paper ties peak potency to a percentage of amber trichome heads, and the research that does exist points somewhere worse than a missing citation. It shows that by the time your loupe fills up with amber, the chemistry you spent 4 months building has already peaked, quietly, weeks earlier, and the whole time, the plant was holding up better signals that most growers have been trained to ignore. Let's state the rule fairly. Because this channel corrects myths, it doesn't strawman them. The folklore goes, clear trichomes mean it's too early, the glands are still filling. Milky means peak THC. Amber means the effect is tipping heavy and sedative. So you split the difference and cut somewhere between 20 and 30% amber for the quote-unquote balanced high. It's clean, it's teachable. A $10 jeweler's loupe turns anyone into a lab tech, and a 3-color chart fits on a sticker. That is exactly why it spread everywhere. The problem is that a color chart is standing in for actual chemistry, and nobody ever checked whether the two agree. And the stakes could not be higher because this is the last decision of the entire grow. 4 months of feeding, training, watering, and worrying all funnel down to one cut date. And most growers make that call off a percentage that no one ever validated. Get it wrong early and you leave potency on the table. Get it wrong late and your harvesting decline. If this channel has one job, it's replacing that kind of rule with what the plant is actually doing. So if that mission is worth something to you, the subscribe button is right there. Now let's look at what potency actually does across those final weeks, because it has a shape, and the shape changes everything. In 2020, researchers at the University of Florida tracked cannabinoid development in 5 varieties week by week using liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry, real quantitative chemistry, not eyeballing colors. The pattern was consistent across the board. Total THC climbed steadily as the flowers matured, reached its maximum around 6 to 7 weeks after flowering began, and then held a plateau. Here's the detail that should change how you plan. The length of that plateau varied from variety to variety. Some held their peak for a while, others sat there briefly, and after the plateau, concentrations declined as the plant senesced. So the true shape is rise, plateau, decline. It is not a slow climb that keeps rewarding you for waiting. That's 5 varieties, 1 pattern, measured in a lab, the closest thing this question has to a controlled answer. The peak is a window. The window has edges, and past the far edge, every extra day of patience is costing you, not paying you. A 2016 study in the Journal of Natural Products found the same shape with an important twist. Different chemotypes reached their peaks at genuinely different times. Some varieties needed weeks longer than others to max out both their cannabinoids and their monoterpenes. Sit with that, because it quietly demolishes every universal rule in the grow guides. A fixed week count, a fixed amber percentage, a breeder's calendar. All of them are guaranteed to be wrong for a chunk of the genetics they get applied to. The plateau is real, but where it lands on the calendar is written in the seed, not in the chart. 2 plants on the same shelf under the same light can be days or weeks apart at peak. Your genetics set the clock. The chart never could, and that variability is not a nuisance to average away. It is the finding. Any harvest rule that ignores the genotype is not simplifying the biology. It is contradicting it. So what is amber actually telling you? In 2023, a microscopy team at Simon Fraser University put maturing trichomes under light and scanning electron microscopes and watched what the end of a gland's life actually looks like. As the heads turned brown, their ultraviolet autofluorescence faded, the optical signature of their contents changing, and the glands began to senesce and dehiss, which means they split open, leaked resin, stuck to their neighbors, and collapsed. Read that again. Amber is the visual signature of a gland aging and physically failing. And this isn't new. Microscopy work going back to 1980 found brown, senescent heads carry less cannabinoid than the milky head sitting right next to them. The 1980 work was chemical. The 2023 work is structural. Both point the same direction. Amber is not ripening. Amber is the gland clocking out. And here's the piece almost everyone has backwards. Amber is not the color of CBN. That's the standard explanation. THC is degrading into CBN, and the gold color proves it. But nobody has actually established what pigment chemistry turns those heads gold. The honest scientific answer is a general oxidative browning of the gland's aging contents, the same family of chemistry that browns a cut apple, not a specific sleep molecule accumulating in visible amounts. And we know what's actually in fresh flower because labs measure it constantly. Fresh flower, even flower harvested late, typically carries under 1% CBN, and often it's barely detectable at all. Meaningful CBN comes from months of storage, not from one extra week on the plant. The tank of sedative story does not survive a basic lab report, which brings us to Couchlock. In 2021, a peer-reviewed systematic review went hunting for the actual human evidence that CBN puts people to sleep. 99 studies were screened, 8 qualified. Most of those 8 came out of the 1970s with sample sizes you could fit in a minivan. The author's conclusion, in polite academic language, was that CBN's sleep reputation appears to be rooted in lore rather than data, and that consumers should be skeptical of the sedation claims printed on products. So, where did the story come from? Probably from something real. Old degraded flour genuinely does hit sleepier, but that's the profile of oxidized THC and collapsed terpenes. And somewhere along the way, the blame got pinned on CBN alone. Then the amber percentage got attached to the sedation story. Folklore stacked on folklore, 2 layers deep. Quick 30-second pause. If these breakdowns are saving your harvest from folklore mistakes, channel membership is 99 cents a month. You get early access to every new video before it goes public, plus a set of members-only emojis for the comment section, which is honestly where the best myth submissions come from. 99 cents, cancel anytime, and it directly funds the research hours these episodes take. Okay, back to the plant. So if amber is a lagging signal of senescence, what should you actually be protecting as harvest approaches? The most fragile thing your plant makes, the terpenes. And here's the part that surprises people. On the living plant, terpene content generally keeps climbing into late flowering. The light, volatile monoterpenes that define a variety's signature, myrcene, limonene, pinene, tend to increase their share of the profile as the flower matures, right up near the end. In fact, several maturation studies show the monoterpene to sesquiterpene ratio rising as flowers finish. The profile is getting brighter, not fading. The plant is still actively building aroma while growers are busy staring at trichome color, which means the catastrophic terpene loss everyone fears is mostly not happening on the plant at all. It happens after the cut, and that changes where your paranoia should be pointed. The classic numbers come from a University of Mississippi team publishing in the Journal of Natural Products back in 1996, and they are brutal. Fresh flower essential oil measured around 92% monoterpenes, dominated by myrcene and limonene, the exact top notes you smell when a jar first opens. After 1 week of air drying, total terpene content had already dropped 31%. After a month, roughly 45%. After 3 months, more than half the terpenes were gone, and a 55% loss, and the lightest, most delicate molecules left first, because volatility is exactly what makes a top note a top note. So understand the division of labor. The harvest decision sets your starting inventory, and the dry and cure decide how much of it you actually keep. Nailing the cut and then botching the dry is picking perfect fruit and leaving it on a hot dashboard. Now, one piece of anatomy this channel is obligated to fix because it changes how you read the plant. Those swelling green teardrops you're told to watch, the things every grow guide calls calyxes, are not calyxes. Botanically, they are floral bracts, small, resin-dense leaf structures that wrap each seed site, and they carry the highest density of glandular trichomes on the entire plant. The true calyx is a translucent veil of tissue, roughly 6 cells thick, wrapped around the ovule. You will never see it without a microscope. Does the name matter? It does, because watch the calyx's swell gets repeated as if your unpollinated flowers are ripening seeds, and they are not. Swelling bracts are real, but the seed ripening story attached to them is fiction. If a term in your harvest checklist can't survive a botany textbook, the whole checklist deserves a second look. And speaking of checklists, drop the harvest rules you've been told in the comments. The most argued ones become future episodes. Here's the morphology that is worth your attention. The stigmas, the hairs. In 2025, a research team published a study in the journal Plants tracking 25 genotypes through harvest windows staged by stigma color, from all white through fully amber and curled, with full lab analysis at every stage. 22 of the 25 genotypes hit peak total cannabinoids when their stigmas were mostly to fully amber and receding, but 3 genotypes peaked before their stigmas showed any amber at all. There's that genetic variability again, refusing to cooperate with universal rules. Then in 2026, a computer vision study trained on more than 13,000 greenhouse images reached a blunt conclusion. The stigma color transition was a more robust indicator of chemical maturity than trichome color ratios were. A machine with perfect eyesight and zero confirmation bias looked at both signals and picked the hairs over the heads. Why would stigmas beat a loupe count? One word, sampling. When you count trichome colors, you're counting the 50 heads you happen to point the loupe at, on the one bud you happen to pick, under whatever light you had. Even the magnification and the light source change the red. Amber under a warm lamp and amber under daylight are not the same call, which is why 2 growers can loupe the same bud and argue about the percentage. The amber percentage literally changes depending on where you look. Top colas run ahead of the lower canopy, and the sun-facing side of a cola runs ahead of its shaded side. Stigma transition, by contrast, is a whole flower signal you can read across the entire canopy from arm's length, and it tracks the same underlying maturation without the microscope theater. To be clear, the loupe still has a job on the panel. It just should never have been the only instrument on it. So here is the framework that actually respects the biology. 3 signals read together, plus a decision about what you're optimizing for. Signal 1, trichome clarity as your floor. You want the canopy dominated by cloudy heads. Cloudy confirms the glands are loaded and you're not early. Heavy amber is your ceiling. That's senescence spreading, which means you're late. Signal 2, stigma transition as your main clock. A majority browned and curled back puts most genotypes in the Plateau's neighborhood. Signal 3, aroma as your terpene gauge. The room at peak intensity means the volatile inventory is at its height. Then your goal picks the edge of the window. Chasing maximum cannabinoid content, sit toward the later edge of the plateau, chasing the variety's true flavor and top notes, cut at the earlier edge while the monoterpene share is peaking, and then protect that inventory with a slow, controlled dry. Same plant, same signals. 2 different correct answers depending on what you're actually growing for. Run it as a pass, the same way every harvest. Loupe check. Cloudy dominant, amber present, but minor. Stigma. Check. Most of the canopy browned and receded, the whole canopy, not just the flashy top cola. Aroma. Check. Intensity peaked and holding, not fading. 3 greens, commit. And if the signals disagree, weight the stigmas and the aroma over any trichome percentage, because those 2 are reading the entire plant while the loupe is reading a postage stamp. One more habit worth building. Treat your first run of any new genotype as a calibration grow. Log which stigma stage lined up with the best final product, and that variety's true window belongs to you forever. No chart required. Write the date, the stigma stage, and the smell in one line. 30 seconds of logging beats a decade of guessing. The amber chart was never the finish line. It was one instrument on a panel that got promoted into a religion, mostly because it photographs well. The plant hands you a full readout: gland clarity, stigma state, aroma, and a genetic clock that runs differently in every pack of seeds. Read the whole panel, cut inside the plateau, and then understand that the moment the scissors close, the job changes completely. The next 90 days can quietly take more than half of the aroma you just fought to protect. And the drying room has more folklore in it than the grow tent ever did. Peace.